Have you ever wished you could become unshakable? Someone who no longer breaks under criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal. Someone who carries peace, not because life is easy, but because they've learned to stop giving pain all the power. Maybe, just maybe, you're tired of constantly trying to please everyone, tired of maintaining a mask of strength while something inside you quietly begs for rest. You look fine on the outside, but deep down, there's a silent pain, an ache you can't name, and all you've ever really wanted was permission to breathe. Let me tell you something most people won't dare say out loud. As long as you're running from pain, that pain will keep chasing you. As long as you numb yourself, try to protect yourself by shrinking or hiding, you're not escaping the hurt, you're binding yourself to it. You become a puppet to every word that stings, every disappointment, every silence that echoes louder than shouting. And no, this isn't weakness. This is human, the only difference. Some people just got better at pretending. Carl Jung, one of the founding minds of depth psychology, once said, "We are not what happens to us, we are what we choose to become." And that's where your power begins. You don't have to become cold, distant, or untouchable. That's not healing, that's hiding. Real transformation comes from integration. It comes from shining a light into the dark corners of your pain. Because strength isn't found in avoiding pain. It's found in knowing exactly who you are even while you're still bleeding. If you're still here, watching, it's not by accident. This message is for you. For the one who feels emotionally outmatched. For the one who gives others more power than they deserve. For the one who smiles while quietly drowning inside. I'm here to show you it doesn't have to be that way, but to change. You'll need to face some uncomfortable truths. And yes, they might hurt. But this time, the pain could be the very thing that finally sets you free. Let's begin. You believe your pain lives out there, in someone's betrayal, in cruel words, in the people who left without explanation. But here's the brutal truth. None of that actually has the power to hurt you unless there's already a wound inside, you waiting to be touched. What hurts isn't what they did. What hurts is what their actions trigger in you. It's the story you tell yourself, the old wound you never looked at, the emptiness you've been patching up with pride and perfection and pretending. Jung taught us that pain from the outside world is just a reflection of what hasn't yet been made whole inside. That's why some people can go through devastating storms and still stay centered, while others fall apart at the weight of a careless comment. It's not about what happens, it's about where it hits. And this brings us to one of the most difficult truths, a truth we'll dive deeper into in the next part. But before we go there, ask yourself, what are the wounds I've hidden behind strength? Because until you know, they'll keep choosing your pain for you. Ready to go deeper? Let's continue. You've just learned that what hurts you on the outside can only wound you deeply when it echoes something unresolved within. Now let's go deeper, because this internal battlefield is not just emotional, it's psychological and largely invisible. So much of your pain exists because, on some level, you still believe you can control how the world treats you. You keep striving, trying to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, endlessly understanding, as if, somehow, that will guarantee you won't be hurt. That if you just do everything right, life will finally play fair. But let's be honest, control is an illusion. And the more tightly you cling to it, the more exhausted and tense you become. You live in a constant state of emotional alertness, trying to predict what cannot be predicted, trying to avoid what is inevitable, discomfort, disappointment, and change? Do you truly want to stop suffering? Then maybe, just maybe, you need to stop trying so hard to protect yourself from suffering. You don't need more control. You need more awareness. As long as you believe people need to change in order for you to stop hurting, you're still handing them the keys to your emotional world. You are still enslaved, held hostage by their moods, their choices, their words. Your freedom doesn't begin when the world becomes kinder. It begins the moment you realize that nothing outside of you has any real power, unless it finds a vulnerable place inside of you. And that vulnerable place, that hidden battlefield, is your unconscious. This is where your real fight is, not with others, not with life, but with what's happening inside you that you haven't yet dared to look at. Because what you do not understand, what you refuse to face, will continue to control you, quietly, relentlessly, invisibly. This is what we're about to explore in the next part. So stay with me, because when you finally face your unconscious, you're not just healing wounds, you're reclaiming your life. Let's go. Earlier, we touched on the idea that what you avoid internally will always find a way to surface. Now, let's explore how that inner resistance sabotages your peace, especially when life seems to be going well. Have you ever noticed how just when things finally start to feel okay, a wave of anxiety or fear suddenly creeps in? It's not just bad luck. It's not the universe turning against you. It's your unconscious trying to wake you up. But instead of listening, you push it away, you numb it, you distract yourself, you pretend you're fine. But here's the truth. As long as you run from what's buried inside, you remain at its mercy. You can't become truly unshakable while avoiding your own shadows. Because the more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more exposed you become to internal chaos. The pain you ignore doesn't disappear, it just digs deeper. So if you want to stop being hurt, the solution isn't more armor, it's more awareness. It's not about building walls, it's about integration. To become untouchable is not to resist. Life fits to know yourself so deeply that nothing outside of you can control what's within. And this kind of strength doesn't come from pretending to be unaffected. It comes from understanding exactly what affects you and why. Too many people believe that emotional resilience means becoming cold or detached. They shut down, tell themselves they no longer care, and wear emotional distance like a badge of honor. But inside, they're still bleeding, still breaking. The pain never left, it just got quieter. Jung saw through this illusion. He believed that the real danger isn't in feeling, it's in not understanding what you feel and why. Without that understanding, you're lost in your own emotional maze, acting out patterns you don't even see. He famously said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." That includes your own. You may have built a character strong, composed, in control, but your true self, the vulnerable self you keep hiding, is desperate to be seen. And this is where real strength begins. Not by denying pain, but by allowing it to teach you something. Emotional strength is not about silence or avoidance. It's about integration. It's the courage to bring into the light everything you've buried in the dark. It's realizing that when you accept your fear, your shame, your flaws, they lose their power over you. You don't become untouchable by hiding from the world. You become untouchable when there's nothing left inside you to run from. Because once you've made peace with yourself, what can the world possibly take from you? This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your whole self. Not the version others want, not the version that performs or pleases, but the version born from truth, the union of ego and unconscious, of light and shadow. And here's the part no one tells you. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming complete. You don't have to fix yourself. You don't need to be better. You only need to be whole. But wholeness has a cost. It requires you to stop running from your pain. Because the more you avoid it, the more fragile you become. And in the next part, we'll uncover why embracing your pain, not escaping, it is the final step toward true emotional power. Let's move forward. Earlier, we explored how your pain might not be your enemy, it might actually be your guide. Now, let's step deeper into this uncomfortable truth, because what you're about to face isn't external, It's the raw reality within yourself. When you finally stop running, when you look directly at your own wounds without flinching, without filters, you begin to realize something profound. That beneath everything you fear, beneath the shame, the sorrow, the resentment, there's something waiting to emerge. A deeper version of you. Not perfect, but whole. Not polished, but real. But make no mistake, this path demands courage. Courage to stop hiding. Courage to feel what you were taught to fear. Courage to remove every mask, even the ones you've worn for so long you forgot they weren't your face. And it is exactly in the pain, not outside of it, that the key to real transformation is hidden. From a young age, you were taught to distrust pain, that suffering was a weakness, that tears were shameful, that sensitivity made you soft. And so, like many, you learned to avoid it, to push it away, to bury it beneath distractions, busyness, or false positivity. But here's what no one told you. The pain you silence doesn't disappear. It just sinks deeper. It doesn't go away. It changes form. It becomes anxiety you can't explain. Anger that flares without reason. Boredom that feels like a silent scream. Numbness that makes every day feel grey. These aren't random, they are the unspoken voices of your buried suffering. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He believed pain wasn't something to eliminate, it was a message. A signal from the unconscious. The voice of the soul crying out, "Please look at me." He said depression is like a woman in black. When she appears, don't send her away. Invite her in. Offer her tea, ask what she's trying to tell you. But most of us don't. We push her away. We distract ourselves. We keep busy. We try to look strong. And in doing so, we miss the very thing we need to hear. So ask yourself now, gently, what is this pain trying to say? You see, suffering only hurts this deeply when there's a civil war inside of you. One part of you is desperate to grow, to change, to evolve. Another part clings to what's familiar, even if it's toxic. That tension between expansion and resistance is what creates pain. Because change isn't clean. Growth isn't neat. Letting go of who you were, shedding old beliefs, cutting ties that once felt safe, that's not easy. It's a kind of mourning, a quiet, internal death. But in that death, something else begins to stir, something new. Because when everything you thought you were begins to crumble, when your old story falls apart, you finally see what's underneath. And that moment, bare, raw, unguarded, is sacred. Because it brings you face to face with the only person who can truly set you free. Yourself. Jung knew this deeply. He understood that pain is not a mistake. It's not a flaw in the system. It's part of the process. Not the end of the road, but the beginning of a deeper journey. A passage through the darkness, toward the light of indivitation. But most people turn back. They get scared. They numb themselves again and go back to the surface. But not you. If you're still here, still listening, still feeling, it means something inside you is ready to go further. And in the next part, we'll talk about what lies on the other side of that dark valley, the rebirth that follows the breakdown. Because what comes after pain is not more pain, it's freedom. We just reached the edge of your old self, and now it's time to cross into something deeper. In the next part, you'll see how this crossing the path of individuation isn't just a concept. It's a transformational process that can feel brutal, isolating, and raw. But it is also the only path that truly sets you free. Very few people ever dare to begin this journey, and even fewer have the strength to finish it. Why? Because individuation doesn't offer comfort. It doesn't promise certainty. It won't protect your ego, it will dismantle it, piece by piece. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming who you are. But that journey requires one painful, powerful step: unlearning everything you think you are. And often, that hurts more than any external rejection ever could. Because what happens when you realize that your identity, the version of yourself you've built and clung to, was shaped more by survival than truth? When you see that you're not your titles, not your trauma, not even the perfectly polished image you've worked so hard to maintain, that realization hits deep. What you believed made you lovable, respectable, admirably, wasn't truly you. It was armor. It was the persona you wore to avoid pain, to win acceptance, to feel safe. But surviving is not living. And individuation calls you to something beyond survival. It's a call from deep within your unconscious. A call that brings everything you've suppressed, avoided, or distorted right to the surface. This is why Jung insisted the persona must dissolve. Because it is nothing more than a mask worn for social convenience. And to become your true self, you must remove that mask, even if it feels like tearing off your own skin. But here's the paradox. The more you embrace this unraveling, the stronger you become. You don't become untouchable by avoiding pain. You become untouchable because you've already walked through the fire. You've faced your monsters. You've looked your shame in the eye, confronted your fears, and told them, "I see you, but you no longer control me." That clarity, that deep recognition of your own darkness, becomes your power. And that power doesn't need praise. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't chase validation. Because it comes from within. You no longer feel the need to be admired by everyone. You no longer argue just to prove a point. You don't need to seem unshakable, because you actually are. Not on the outside, but at the core. True emotional armor isn't a wall, it's a center. It's the integration of every fractured part of yourself, aligned in awareness. Storms may still come, pain may still visit, but it no longer breaks you. You might bleed, but you won't lose yourself, because you've stopped living reactively. You've stopped chasing illusions, and you've started dwelling in your own depth. That depth, however, does not come without a cost. You may find yourself standing alone, not because no one loves you, but because very few can walk this path with you. Most people still cling to masks. They fear the discomfort of feeling. They avoid looking within. And as you begin to liberate yourself, you inevitably grow apart from those who remain trapped in illusions. This separation isn't rejection, it's growth. You don't walk away from them with arrogance. You simply no longer fit into the spaces where you once had to hide your truth. And that brings us to one final turning point on this journey. The realization that consciousness itself becomes your greatest protection. And that is exactly what we'll explore next. Clarity not force is what truly shields you. And now, we reach the final step in this journey. The kind of inner consciousness where nothing outside of you can truly shake you anymore. Let's finish this transformation together. We are almost there. You've come so far. But there's something you must hear with complete honesty. No external armor, no defense, no strategy will protect you from pain if you remain unaware of what's happening inside of you. The harsh words will still cut deep. The rejections will still sting. The disappointments will still pull you down until you choose to wake up. And awakening is not some mystical lightning bolt. It is a daily, deliberate decision. It's choosing to face yourself even when it's uncomfortable. It's choosing to stop blaming your pain on other people, the past, or some unfair destiny. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You've spent years, maybe decades, resisting what you feared. The possibility that you're not enough. The sharp loneliness of being rejected. The haunting silence of not being seen. But what did you do with those fears? You hid them. You suppressed your voice. You tried to stay in control at all costs. You wore perfection like a mask. You pretended to be strong when you were breaking inside. And all of that, every effort to run from your truth, has led you here. Exhausted, tired not just of the world, but of constantly fighting yourself. But now, you see it clearly. True strength isn't found in walls or weapons. It's found in awareness. Emotional immunity doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop collapsing every time something touches a wound. It means you can stand steady in the storm. Because you've come to know the weather inside your own heart. You still feel pain, yes, but it no longer controls your direction. You still face challenges, but they no longer unravel your identity. That changes everything. Protection doesn't come from avoiding life. It comes from diving deeply into it with presence, with self-knowledge, with full acceptance. People who only live on the surface are thrown by every wave. But those who dive beneath the chaos find something else entirely. Silence, stability, strength. That is where you are now headed. And when you begin to live from this grounded state from within your own center, life still challenges you. But it no longer knows how to break you. Because there's nothing fragile left to hit. If this message spoke to something inside you, if it stirred even the smallest spark, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Let's begin a quiet revolution of people who no longer fake strength to survive, but who choose to live in truth. And this journey isn't over yet. The next video continues what you've started here. Don't stop now. Real transformation doesn't come from understanding one idea, comes from living it again and again. See you there.